Hello everyone, Will JV and Dawson here.
And my name is Aaron Woodman. We are here with Katie Aiello, who is the councilwoman for the First Ward of Utica. She is here to talk to us more specifically about the Common Council and talk to us more about what a council member does. So thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. My name's Katie Aiello. We're in my coffee shop right now, Character Coffee in downtown Utica. And I'm a mom. I have two girls, ages like 5 and 7. In 2019, I decided to run for office. Started going to meetings in about 2018. And during that time, there was a lot going on at the council, and I was frustrated with my representation. So I remember people were about to run, and I was saying, guys, who's going to run against my council person? And I went around town asking everybody, and then about 2 weeks in, I realized, shoot, it's me. It's like, because if you care this much and you're this frustrated, that's kind of your civic responsibility to definitely lost. That's okay. I never stopped going to meetings though. I remember knocking on doors, and even now I'll knock on the door and be like, hi, I'm Katie, I'm running for Common Council. And they say, what's the Common Council? So it's like, I totally get that. I was there, and we don't really talk about that. And then not to mention county legislators and all these people. We talk about national politics all the time, but local politics, we're the ones who actually get your roads paved. We're the ones who make sure your garbage was picked up and your grass is cleaned up. And this is where I think, people have a lot of disdain for national politics, and I totally get that. But then locally, we need to keep people not burnt out and invested in. And elected officials have to give people a reason to see the system working for them.
Is that why you chose the Common Council path as a way of running for public office?
Yeah, I think, being in my coffee shop, we're on the busy corner here in downtown Utica, and I just felt like people were making decisions who weren't being affected by those decisions. And I thought a good part about government is to make government better, people who are actually impacted should have a seat at that table. And, I used to be so anti-establishment. That's a big part of my story. And I thought everything they did was malicious and corrupt.
Right.
And I remember when I was running for office the second time, and it was looking like I was going to win, I sit down with the mayor then was Rob Palmieri. I made a lot of posts about the man. And we were just we were not seeing eye to eye. And I was very upset with him about things. So he calls me, he's like, let's meet. I'm like, okay. So we sit down in his conference room, and he's like, why do you hate me? Let's just be real. And I'm like, I don't hate you, but and I'm just laughing. I feel like I'm paraphrasing, but that's kind of what it was. But it was so good, and we sat there and talked for 2 hours. Wow. And everybody's like, you got Rob Palmieri to talk for 2 hours, to sit for that long. I'm like, yeah, if you when we're talking about the city, that man can just keep going, and it just really inspired me. And it was good though. I needed to hear that. There were so many things I said. Well, I was mad about how you did this or anything. He's like, oh, well, here's why we did all of that. We like what you said, but that wasn't possible. Here's all the government limitations. And I was like, oh. And it just I learned so much of that and these government limitations. So I think I took away from that conversation, if you can just communicate these things to people, that can really help change a narrative.
You already touched on the fact that, there's national politics and government, and then there's also local government. So why would you say being civically engaged, especially on a local level, is important?
It's really frustrating. We have a city of 65,000 people. I would say 25% is probably under 18. So what does that make? 40,000, 45,000 people who are able to vote. We see maybe 6,000 people come out and vote in some elections, 6,000 to 8,000. That's really hard. And a lot of the people are the people who have been here for generations who are voting. And I think that it's a lot of homeowners. And I think we're missing huge populations of people. We need to get them activated to vote. My district's so hard too, because it's mostly apartments. It's so transitional. I'll go knock on a door because it says somebody's registered to vote there, but they've been gone and moved back who knows where, 2 years ago. So it's giving people roots and just buy into their place, because a lot can change. It's hard so my district is downtown Utica, a little bit east, a little bit west. And I have the lowest voting turnout every year. I think 300 to 400 might come out and vote, and all of our districts are separated by 10,000 people, 10,000 voters each. And then you have Cornhill, 5th Ward, is also one of the lowest turnouts. But we're also we have some of the most minorities, and just it's just a complete diverse representation. I have the lowest income to some of the highest income if you count the lobster. And but the representation here really what happens here is so different than what happens in the rest of Oneida County. Like this urban setting is a completely different life experience. And I don't know, I look at who's voting, and I feel like it's not actually a reflection of what the city makeup is. And when I look at the first ward and fifth ward, I'm like, you guys could change the city. And you know, sometimes I knock on these doors though, and they're like, what's the point? Nobody's gonna do anything for me. Okay, how do I give them trust? And I think one of the best things I saw over the years is when the kids from the skate park, they would come to meetings. This is even before COVID started, and they're like, hey, the city skate park is falling apart. Can you guys, like, we've been fixing it up, but like, can you? Which is super embarrassing for the city because it's our responsibility and an actual liability if we don't. And they were so cool, and they took so much pride in their space. And then it just happened to be that COVID happens, and then we get the American Rescue Plan Act money to revitalize the city. And the Mayor Palmieri at the time saw what these kids were doing and investing, and he's like, you know what? We're not just gonna fix up that skate park, we're gonna give you 2. And we're gonna have one that's gonna be fitted for like tournaments and all this stuff over at the Proctor Park. And it was so cool to see how, like, that's how government's supposed to work. And you don't always get like this big check to do whatever for people, but you do get to fix potholes sometimes. You do get to, you know, if their landlord's not responding to the codes issues, we can follow up on that and we can make their life better, so.
As we were talking about like what the council can and cannot do, you know, there's obviously been a tragedy in the city of Utica over this past weekend, and part of the community, like a lot of the community is asking, like, what are y'all gonna do about it? Like, being that you're part of the council, like, what are your limitations in that regard? What can you do? What can you not do?
So the interesting thing is, after George Floyd, and because of police reform, now anytime that there is an officer involved shooting, death, you have to contact the Attorney General's office within 1 hour. That happened. They followed protocol on that, of course. And somebody from the Attorney General's office was up here by 3 a.m. that night, already on the scene, starting their own separate investigation. So people are calling for justice in certain things, like whatever they want to see with the officer. That's not anybody's role in the city, and that's for a very good reason. That should not come from anybody local. It's something that is meant with unbiased look at all the facts. The Attorney General is Letitia James. They take this very seriously. If you have questions or if you have other complaints, that is the office to go to. Now, internally, the city is also doing their own investigation, and they handle their own conduct, and nobody wanted to see this happen, and they don't ever especially want to see it happen again. So I think right now the conversation is, how did we get here? Where do we go from here?
How do you educate people about like what the council is doing so people can stay informed and can understand what's going on?
That's a great question. My biggest thing, I used to love, I had this big vision when I started on the council. I was gonna have a whole voting recap. I'm gonna do all my, like, I usually do like YouTube videos and just explain things in detail. That's more my style. I used to do like video production back in the day. But when you're on the council, it's nonstop meetings sometimes, it's constituent services. It's like I almost don't have the time to also produce and do these things that I wanted, and it's frustrating. But what I do have time for is I always make myself accessible with like these interviews, but also I love just like jumping on Instagram stories or even TikTok, and you can just talk to the camera for a minute and a half, say what you need to say, and it gets the conversation started. And that's actually one of the things that got me involved to run again. After I lost in 2019, something was happening with term limits, and I just pick up my phone. I never want to be in front of the camera, but I'm like, I have to talk to somebody about this. Like, who am I gonna hang out with about this? This is crazy. I don't even think anybody's gonna care. I remember just picking up the camera and saying something, and then I was like, who would care? But then my inbox was just full of all these people caring, and turns out they did. They just didn't know what was happening, and that was really cool. So hopefully that starts turning into more action and more people just speaking up on stuff.
Because this is a diverse city, there's a lot of different cultures and ethnic groups here too. And of course, with the situation that happened over the weekend, there's a language barrier that I'm really noticing here. But try to communicate like what's happening and what will happen with the investigation too. So how, like, as you as a councilwoman, and even like just for council members in general, how can they like communicate with like different types of ethnic groups here so that they can understand like what's happening in the city?
It's not always fast and easy to do. It takes time, and it's a door-to-door slow thing, but that's when it works, and that's when it's like the most sustainable. For me, I think my biggest way that I love to communicate is I'm very big on video production. I think that's what's kind of cool in this upcoming generation of just we're redefining what is expected of elected officials. There's a lot of people who have been in for 12 years. Our generation doesn't necessarily know their names. If you want to see change, you should call these council people directly. All the numbers are listed there, and say, hey, are you free to meet for like coffee for 20 minutes? I have questions. Especially if you want something, if you're looking for a change, I would meet with all of them individually, just one-on-one for conversations, before springing it onto them and like on the council floor for the first time about something, and where they can all decide together. Like, I just think one-on-one is so important. We're missing like this relationship aspect. But these are what these people are here for.
You mentioned you started running in 2019, and you ran a couple times before being a council person. So when it comes to like deciding if I want to just run for public office in general, like what's some stuff that people would need to know first before even declaring that they're going to run? I
think, well, my biggest thing is go to meetings, because you might not want to. And I think a lot of people just say, like, I hear so many people say, I want to be the mayor. I'm like, why? Like, are you sure? Do you know what this is? Right. And you really might not want to do it. But I think some people will start to go to meetings, and you're going to learn that you really, really want to do it. So if you're in that phase and you start to learn, you need a network of people. You need people to believe in you. It can't, like, my big thing too is it can't just be for you and about you. It's frustrating because I think politics, I hate that the personality that is required to win a race is not necessarily the personality that we want in our leaders. And like the almost narcissistic, ego-driven personality type, to have the mindset of like, I'm the best, I'm going to win this race, because you need that actually to get into this. But then that person in elected office might not be interested in listening to anybody else. So it doesn't answer your question, but you need a network of people to help. It depends how big the race is. Some people just want to run for like their town clerk, and it's a town of 2,000 people, and that's different. For me, it was you're going to need to get on the ballot. That starts in February. You got to get signatures. And whatever party you're with, you need 5% of signatures from the registered people in your district for that party. So for me, I'm on the Democratic Party. I needed 160 signatures about to get on the ballot to run for office. And you just go around and you just say, hey, I'm running. This isn't a vote. Can you sign here? And the rule is, there's literally one rule, and it's whoever signs needs to be the one who signs, which sounds like I'm stating something really obvious, but actually the person who I ran against last term, they forged so many of the signatures. They targeted minorities, people with disabilities. There were signatures that looked nothing like it. So in that instance, I knew how to take her to court because here we are, complete forgeries throughout everything. And I know this because, so it's interesting, it's a primary, and you just want to be able to get, if it's a primary and you're in the same district, you need to get the signature first, or else it doesn't count. If you get on the same day, they're both out. So the game is you want to get a little bit more in case, like, normally things are like, no, that person actually wasn't registered to vote there anymore. You get a list of people, but it is not always easy to get on the ballot. And I think a lot of people, like, you know, we talk about getting involved and making sure like we're voting and showing up, and they talk about election fraud, but only for like November. Like, guys, it happens a lot earlier than that. Right. And any citizen though can, if you see an elected official and you're like, something's strange, you, during that process when it's time to submit, you have a month to submit signatures, you can go to Board of Elections, request to see it, and you can challenge those signatures right there. And that's a really cool process I don't think people know. Sorry, I'm always going to give you the long answer though. This isn't typical for everybody, but it's,
so is there like a fee that you have to pay to kind of get on the ballot type thing? Okay.
No. Some people were actually toying with that because during COVID, it was like, how do we go door to door to get signatures? And they were like, what if we did 50 cents a signature or something? And
oh, wow.
Some people, I'm like, I guess that's a way. I don't totally love like buying your way in,
Right.
and I want it to be anybody, but you could still get signatures and do the work that way.
For sure. Okay.
But yeah, no fees. Going to court did cost me thousands.
Oof.
It took political donations, and I had to foot the bill for the rest. And thankfully, the council like pays, but it's ridiculous. I'm just still so angry that I had to pay because somebody else was forging signatures of my constituents, and the people that they targeted. It was so upsetting, and these are the people they want to represent. So it's just awful, and I think it just kind of shows you who's trying to run and for why, and that's upsetting. So once you're on the ballot, then that's really exciting. There's different ways to fundraise. I think if you're a Democrat, you can use Act Blue. If you're a Republican, I forget what they have.
It's
what
not
platform.
Act Red.
Yeah, something like that. It's like Red.
Well,
Wave or something.
it
It's
would
close to
sound
that,
nice,
though.
but I don't know.
I bet you if you Google that, it'll work. And so that helps. And with campaign financing, Board of Elections, if you just say, hey, I want to run for office, they'll literally walk you through everything. And in Board of Elections, it's cool because you always have a Democrat and a Republican working side by side for everything. And they will walk you through your campaign finance because every quarter you have to update. Even if you didn't get a donation, you just say, hey, that didn't happen online. It's super easy.
Right.
And and then to run, if there's debates, you go to those. If it's the best thing I think you can do, though, even before doing that, is like be in the community in some way.
Right.
Like what you guys are doing with this podcast or something. It's like be there,
Be active.
be at Levitt, be at the places. Just like it'll happen.
Right. That's very
And
important.
the best is if you can just work with people, not behind the scenes, but ahead of things, and just if you have work with other people already in office, and ideally they want you in with you. And if not, don't worry about that. There's plenty of ways.
Right. For sure.
And I think don't worry about if you don't win. It's whatever you make that race be.
Right.
Because my big thing is getting these people on record, because that's when the opponents will say a lot of promises. Hold them to it.
Yeah,
So
true.
that's where if there is an opponent, if there's not an opponent, it's a lot harder to get that done.
When you were running for council, was it just you, or did you have like a team of people?
It was, I had a couple people specifically helping me. I had such a unique experience though, my second one. The other thing you want to do is get endorsements for running. So I went to you're supposed to screen with whatever party you want to run with. You can run as an independent, you know. And well, yeah, you did the write-in. That was a crazy, incredible feat. You got so many write-ins actually. I was like,
Yeah, that was tough.
that's a lot.
I'm just thinking, and that was actually one of my questions. Like, would it be more beneficial to run on a party line versus being independent,
100%.
and why? Like, so
It's already built in. Like people look. It's so hard to recreate the wheel. It's so hard to get people out to vote anyway. And the more steps you add, it's too much work, unfortunately, to teach people so much. And marketing, especially with how much information people have to digest these days. They're just like ads on their phone, and they're just inundated with information.
Right,
It's a
right.
lot.
Yeah, and it's a huge learning.
The less
curve,
steps you can give them, the better. And
Yeah, I was canvassing, and there was a couple of people that didn't even know who Joe Biden was. So it was just like,
Dude,
oof, this is going to be difficult. Like,
I remember my second time running, somebody was walking in and they're like, hey, we're voting for the president, right? I'm like, no, that's next year. And they're like, oh, okay. And they turn around. I'm like, wait, like, what are you doing? Get back here. And they didn't want to. They didn't care. And one of the things I learned is in Utica, the president's race, we'll get about 18,000 voters. And then when it's a mayoral race, we won't even break 10,000.
Wow.
And then when it's like a common council year without the mayor's race, we're lucky if we're getting 6,000.
Wow.
So for every ballot, like every time down the ballot, the smaller it is, the less turnout we get, which is crazy because that's when it impacts the city the most, is those end names on the ballot.
Right, for sure.
So it's really hard.
Yeah.
And you're better off just screening with a party, getting their endorsement, and then being on the ballot. And
So how do you get endorsements?
so you just basically early on, you email them and you say, hey, I'm interested in running. And you submit a letter of like interest. And they'll say, thank you. Here's when we're doing screenings. So then you go before their committee. And that's the big thing. There's a Republican committee and a Democratic committee for the county as a whole and for the city. You want to contact your city committee. Ours has like a website. You can just look that up. And so they let me screen. I originally had the endorsement from my city committee. And that was supposed to hold. But then we went to the Oneida County one where we make it official. And when I walk in, I see my opponent sitting there, who I knew was running for the primary. I'm like, but she's not on the committee. So I'm like, why is she here? They're like, oh, you just have to screen one more time. No big deal. And I'm like, and they're like, you're going to get it though. Don't worry about it. I'm like, okay. So I say my speech and everything, and I sit down with my committee, who I'm the only one who's gone to my own committee meetings for a whole year, and whatever. And then my opponent gets up and speaks from a sheet of paper and wants to, you know, do fund her own building. That's what they wanted the bribe for, right? For down the street. And I was just like, are we serious right now? So then my committee, they get up and they say, all right, who is there a nomination for Katie Aiello? My table is silent. I'm like, I look to the person next to me who's like my committee chairman. I'm like, hey, they said for Katie? She's like, I know. I'm like, oh, that's how we're doing it. I'm like, okay, cool. I didn't even second for myself because I'm like, we'll play this. So then they did it for Morella. And nobody told me within that week and a half that this was the game.
Right.
But that was because the mayor, who I wasn't going to endorse until the primary, well, Frank DeBrango wanted it. This was like this retaliation, and they wanted a strong line, and they didn't like me. So they wanted to stack it with their person.
So I was actually going to ask if getting the endorsement by your committee, does that kind of mean that you're going to win by default?
A lot of people don't know what it means,
Right,
honestly.
okay.
It helps, like you can say I'm the endorsed candidate, and that does like influence people sometimes at the door, but at the same time,
some people don't even
people
know
don't care.
what
Like I
endorsement
won
is.
in the
Like
end.
what is an
I kicked her
endorsement?
off. It's
Like,
you get to put the seal on your name. You get to say
that you got like a stamp of approval.
sometimes an
by
endorsement's
this-
not good. You can be like, look, the way they've been running things is running into the ground. I'm part of the party, I'm running. So it's just a primary, so that means it's in June, and that's just to get on the main ballot for November.
Gotcha.
Endorsements, is there like any other endorsements that you like
Absolutely.
reach out to, like any other
I love
Organization.
other
best thing you do is like look up if there's a congressperson you like locally, look up their site and see all the endorsements they have. Reach out to all those people. I like Vote Mama, any moms running. Like there's so many different things, and they'll
Can you get like individual
you don't have
from
to.
people,
Yeah, you
or
can.
do they have to be organizations?
Anything,
Are you
can
limited
count
to how
anything as an
many you can get?
endorsement and put it on your palm cards or whatever if you want.
Okay.
But these organizations like 1199 SEIU, a lot of times that's a healthcare union, and a lot of times they'll give you $1,000 if you are on the ballot like after the primary. So that's huge, especially for like a district my size.
Right.
A lot of these will like invest and like Vote Mama, like these certain ones. If you got on, your name's on their website. It's just really good publicity. And some of these places, you want the endorsements who are willing to go door to door for you too.
Right. What people may not know is, running obviously costs money because you got to pay for, what is it particularly that you have to really like pay for?
The yard signs, I
Yard
think
signs,
people
yeah.
say signs don't vote, but I think I've
Visibility
done it where it's
matters.
like, I don't know whose name that is on the sign, but the fourth week I go by, I'm like, oh, I know Joe Schmo.
Right.
Like
for
it just
sure.
it gets like subliminally.
Yeah,
Some
yeah.
people like merch.
So why do some like not put their faces on it? Is that like taboo or?
I think the face thing's weird,
Okay.
personally. Did you do a face on yours? I'm
I
sorry.
did.
That's fucking funny.
No, but I think for me,
But
like
you're
I
great.
was justified because I was a writing candidate.
Yes.
So I needed
Honestly,
to.
though, that is a good
Like,
call.
you know what I mean? For me, it was just like they need to see who I am.
Yep.
Because they're writing me in, like
I like
mean?
that for
But
you.
I didn't really know like.
I just don't
after
want my
did it-
face on a photo. That's like
After I
wrong.
did it, I'm just like, wait, is this even like protocol? Is there like rules against
You do whatever
this?
you want
Like,
with it.
Okay.
as long as there's no bad words.
Yeah. And it also, but my thing also, I'm probably just cheap, and I was like, actually, my sign's up there on the top of that photo over there, and I just stuck the 3 colors because
Oh
it's
yeah,
the cheapest.
nice. I remember that.
Yeah, and that's the.
Nah, and I
that's
like how
pretty
you
funny.
use. Did you design that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I like
used
how
to
you
grab it.
use the font that you use. 'cause
Thank
it,
you.
It screams.
Back in our
Like-
SUNY IT days with Russ.
Exactly.
What was it? See, what class were we
Yeah, it
in?
was.
Com 306 or?
That's a good question. I
I
feel like
know.
we had multiple classes together.
think we did.
And one of them was probably like with the typography and stuff
Yeah.
like that, like learning about the different font
It
faces.
matters.
And
Yes.
it definitely does, especially in like marketing, branding, all of that stuff. It might have even been a branding class that we did.
I think so. And
Yeah.
honestly, it saves money if you can just do it yourself.
Exactly.
That's a huge part. Also mailers help, stamps.
Yeah.
I did not, it depends how big your district is, but for me, it's like I would just fold up my pamphlets that says, hi, I'm running, and I would go door to door.
Right.
I do like door hangers. But whatever you do, never put, if you're going door to door, it's illegal to put information inside somebody's mailbox. The only way information can get in a mailbox is if it was mailed and the post office did it. Otherwise, you can like open up a screen door in a crack and leave it in there. You can leave it in a door handle.
Yeah.
But like stuff, if you've never read before, that can be scary and you do the wrong thing. So.
Oh, well, that's definitely good to know because
Yeah.
of course you're door knocking, you want
Yep.
people to
I
like
didn't
see.
know.
And then if you are like, the other thing, you want to set up a bank account,
Yeah.
and you want to get an EIN number through
Yeah.
the taxes for your thing. So you just like go on IRS and put in your
Just
social
create
security.
one.
You'll get your own EIN.
Okay.
Whatever you want to be committee, Friends of Katie Aiello or whatever, you can name
No,
it.
it has to be an individual. It can't be like your own already EIN registered business.
I guess you could. I would just make it. Yeah, I would separate
It'd
it
be
actually
safe to
because the taxes and stuff you'll just want to all
Okay. for
probably.
sure.
I've never done it combined, so.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, that's all easy-ish. But it's scary if you've never done it before.
Website.
But Board of Elections has all this stuff step by step. So then you go to the bank and you say, I want to set up a campaign account, and you have your EIN, and they help you set up that.
Okay.
And then all the money you just put in there, and then when you update it on Board of Elections website, you're good to go. But that's where if you're doing mailers, you say paid for by Friends of Katie Aiello, or you say paid for by your committee.
Okay.
So-
And that's important.
Yep.
Okay. for
Campaign finance law. Election day, know where your poll sites are, make the phone
That's
calls, and then you were out there the whole day of.
Yeah.
Some people disagree and they're like, nothing happens on the day. But I would get so many votes just standing there.
Just just. the
They
day
want to see
of.
the person's there.
Exactly.
I only have 2 poll sites. What did you have?
I had one. I think I had 3.
That's hard.
I had 3, and I was jumping from each of them. There was Donovan. There was the fire station.
Yep. And City Hall a little bit, right?
And then City Hall. Yeah. So
Yeah.
those were the 3.
So that's where I think it helps. People are walking in and it's like just the last. You know what killed me though? The first time I ran in 2019, this guy pulls in and he had like this Star Wars Rebellion license plate. And I was like, cool license plate. And he's like, thanks, you just got my vote.
Oh.
And he turns around and he's like, wait, what's your name? I'm like, Katie. And like, which is nice, but at the same time, I'm like, I just spent 10 months learning every fact, debating everything possible, and that got the vote.
As you mentioned, like it's important to go out in the community, talk with people about like why you're running and what you want to do when you get in office. How do you convey this information to people so that they understand?
It's so hard. I guess it's not that hard. Some of the tips that were taught to me is have 3 points and say it over and over and over. Once you're sick of talking about it, that's just about the time people will start hearing what you said. And I thought that was really good advice. So there's like stories that I repeat almost on every podcast sometimes, but it's like, honestly, people are like, whoa, when did that happen? I'm like, I've been talking about this for 1.5 years. But this is like, that's just how media and I think marketing works.
True.
So if you're exhausted about saying it, you've almost said it enough. And that really matters. 3 points are simple, keep it to that so people can remember who you are, what you're for. And if you can pick something, help be the why, like explain to them. I don't know, I hear these words like transparency and accountability. I'm like, what does that even mean? And it's important, but give it context.
Right.
And
That's
I think
important.
it's better if you can like target like more things. My big thing was like wanting to combat the youth exodus. I don't know if I really did a great job executing that in my marketing a ton, but that's something I'm really passionate about. And I would talk about like helping small businesses, and I think those are all, important factors. But you've got to look at what does the voting base care for, and
Right.
they care about their taxes being lower and their homes having the best value possible. And so
Right.
like, are you going to enforce codes? Are you going to give me incentives to help revitalize my home? Are you going to pave my street so it's easier to sell? And I think you just really got to get in the mindset of your voters
Right.
and
that's
ask them. Honestly, door to door, it goes so far.
Of course, you won the primary and the general, and now you are part of the council.
Yeah, my second term now. Yep.
Exactly. So,
What is termed out?
2 years. Every term is 2 years, and right now the council elected officials are for 8 years total. So
Oh, okay.
when you're a mayor, that's 4 years means 2 terms.
Right,
for me,
right.
2 terms means
4 years.
Yeah. 4 terms.
4 terms.
The term limits are different for at-large and wards, or are they
No,
the same?
all the same for us.
Oh.
In some jurisdictions, though, it is
But
it is
because
alternated.
it's like a different position,
Staggered. I mean, yeah.
because it's like a different position going from council to at-large, would you then have another
Well, it's all
8
the same
years?
council,
Okay, so
but
it
it is a different elected position.
Right,
But you're just
so-
sitting across the room doing the same job.
Right,
But
right.
now different. So you could just
Go
you
for
could do
another 8 years?
Yep.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Okay, good.
That's a really interesting question, though. So yeah, I think it's in the rule because there are 3 at-large council seats,
Right.
but we don't differentiate 1, 2, and 3, I guess. Some things that I think are really cool is if you go to the Common Council, you go to departments, Common Council, click on agendas, and then if you click on agendas, there's this thing called E-code. So all of our city laws live on E-code. All of our meeting minutes are on E-code,
That's good to know.
and we have the charter, and then we have a code of ordinances. The charter is basically like the
Kinda like
Constitution, the foundation.
Declaration.
Yeah.
Like
I'm trying to think. It's like,
independence.
yeah, I feel like it's the Bible. Like it's just like the basics, and then the code of ordinances are all the different laws that we do, like parking things and things that can be fluid and change. Charter is set by like a charter revision, and it's the law of like what our terms are, and all this stuff.
That's
And
kind of like the Constitution of
Yeah.
Utica, pretty much.
Basically.
Like, okay, that makes
so
sense.
that's cool. So it all lives there. So if you want to see what any laws are, if you want to see any little thing, and you can just type in a word. If you type in dogs, it'll pull up all the laws, and we have in dogs and
Really?
dog
Wow.
parks and stuff.
Okay.
So
It's that vast of a database. Huh?
yeah, E-code's
How
great.
many
A lot of
laws
cities
would
use it.
How many laws would you say there are in Utica?
100. No, I'm kidding. It's
A lot.
I printed out the whole code of ordinances once and the charter, and I have a binder that's like this thick. It's hundreds of pages.
Wow.
No, it's probably thousands, a little over, and it's.
Are they very descriptive?
Some are ridiculous. It's like it's actually yes, they are descriptive, but it's some are it's illegal actually to spit outside because that was a
we
law
found
that
that.
happened in like 1964 that was still in the
Right,
books.
yeah.
So there's stuff in there that is outdated. We do need to revise, but it's like it's a lot of work to go through all of this.
That's interesting.
Maybe when I'm retired from the council, like I'll just do this as like my side hustle. It'll just be like, yeah. And but it is in there, and if you want to learn about planning board and all this stuff, it's like you can just it's all there.
Wow,
So it's pretty
okay.
cool.
That's good.
And it's
That's good.
our website also has obviously the urban renewal. We definitely need a better website. It's so hard to figure out what meetings are and stuff.
Yeah, it's very
Hopefully
archaic.
they're gonna fix that.
Yeah.
But things like if you go to, you have police personnel records, you have like the urban renewal stuff, you have zoning laws, you have stuff right there.
Right,
And if you don't
for
know
sure.
anything, you can literally just call City Hall. The secretaries are lovely, and they'll tell you what's going on.
When it comes to transitioning into the council, how did you transition into that?
Good. Let me refresh my mind here. Transition, the hardest part for me is that nobody, when you're an elected official, tells you how to be one. There is no training, there's no nothing. Maybe it's like a common council president could do that someday or something and take that on. But people are not incentivized, elected officials are not incentivized to say, here you go, here's what I did the past 4 years, here's my binder of notes, because
Right.
you're an opponent probably at some point. You could threaten to take my seat. Why would I want to give you and I hate that part of politics.
Right.
And like when I first went to City Hall, I'm like, what are all these rooms? Where's IT? Like I didn't even know some of the layout. It took me months, like 4 months, to even know I had letterheads and business cards because I didn't know that was in the back that everybody else knew about. And that's where I hope. But like there's tons of stuff. People, when I say come to public comment, you don't necessarily know. That means go to City Hall, walk through the front doors Wednesday at 6:45, take it right into the council chambers, go to the podium up front, sign a piece of paper to put your name on for the 7 o'clock meeting. So it's trying to translate that same stuff for constituents too. We need you, you need to. We need more people at meetings. We need more people, like if you're like, we need more people in the Facebook debates. Like if there's something.
Not just when something happens.
Yeah.
You know, like.
Yeah, and there's ways to do it that it doesn't have to be a fight. I think you can, it's gotta be about coming together.
Right.
And like I have to check myself on that every day. And it's like my biggest enemies, they're not enemies, but it's like the best thing for Utica. And that's the thing, so many times we're all fighting each other, and ideally what we both care about is the city. We just have different views on it.
Right.
So it's like, how do we get there? And
common
I think the more
ground.
people who come at it with that, but it's the accountability. And when we say accountability, I mean literally asking our elected officials, what's up with that? Where do you stand? Why? And like you guys, like everybody should, we all should.
And I think by doing that, that would really much put the focus back on the politics that matter. It kind of reminds me of like Greek mythology where the gods needed the prayers from, you know, the individuals to be powerful. So I just feel like in the same sense, like if people actually come to you, they hold you accountable, they're actually participating in council meetings and they're showing up and they have more of a presence in local politics, I think that that would make politicians be more focused on the people again. But I think because there's a lack in civic engagement, that's where there's a lot of downtime where, you know, the politicians can just kind of go off topic and go down different rabbit holes that they don't need to. You know what I'm saying?
I think, yeah, you're like during this conversation, I'm kind of realizing like how few people actually do reach out to us. Where they need constituent services, they need the street light fix and stuff, but how few things people are like, where do you stand on this? What's your long-term goal for this?
Right.
And that's up for people to. It's we get the government we deserve.
Right.
It's whatever we work for it, and it's cool. It's an exciting time. Stuff like this has never existed before.
Right.
Like I can't imagine what the political machines would think of this back in the day. Like this is a big feat. So like thank you for doing stuff like this.
Yes, and we definitely thank you for joining us.
If anybody wants to reach out and have like questions on how to run or something, I'm always open. KatieForUtica.com has all my information to learn more, but would love to see more people in the fight.
For sure. Well, thank you all for tuning in. My name is Will Javian Dawson again, and we have
Aaron Woodman.
And then we also have Katie Aiello, special guest tonight, who is actually the First Ward Common Councilwoman and also the owner of Character Coffee. So thank you again, and everyone have a good night.